So, greetings, fellow faculty. Thank you for all the input. And if there's anything still wrong, it's your fault. As requested, I've changed the presentation to homelessness, literature, and social justice. And I will introduce myself as a longtime LMU faculty member who's appreciated having a career at LMU. Because I've gotten to explore any number of problems I've wanted to rather than being a specialist. And the LMU mission has challenged me to expand my teaching in different ways. So today I'm going to offer a reflection and give you a kind of taste of what the LMU academic experience might be based on a course that I developed and taught in recent years at LMU. First thing we might want to do is talk about what the LMU academic experience actually is, and it grows right out of our mission statement, which I'm sure you've been oriented to already. But essentially the mission statement centers on learning, teaching of the whole person that connects to faith that does justice. And from a faculty perspective, this mission asks you to do some things. It asks you to, as you would at any university, develop expertise in your discipline. The mission challenges you to relate the knowledge that you develop to issues of faith and/or social justice. But most importantly, it really challenges you to keep doing more and developing, to use your academic training to explore problems, expand your expertise, and set out in new directions over the course of your career. So I'm going to talk to you about the theme of homelessness today, but just as background context, I think it's worth explaining a little bit how this course came about. For years, I am proud to have developed a course about nothing, and in that course about nothing, we actually do something. And the aim of the course about nothing was really to think about deep questions. Why is there something rather than nothing? Where did we come from? What was there before we were there? But I always looked at two texts in particular, the Book of Job and King Lear, who have main characters who lose everything. They encounter nothing in a material sense. I taught that course for years, and then out of it grew the idea that with King Lear and the Book of Job, there's actually a way to teach English, my field. We could teach it as wisdom literature. So we're not teaching knowledge to students, we're trying to impart wisdom to students. And in that course, I selected a number of literary texts that I thought contained a certain kind of wisdom. Then I was challenged to develop a course for a grant on themes of faith and justice. And I looked at the courses that I teach, and I looked at this course in particular, and I realized that really at the heart of the Book of Job and King Lear are characters that from a literary or religious perspective we think of as universal figures, as figures that embody the human condition and human suffering as such. But when I look at them from a different lens, they really raise the question of if there is divine justice, if there is a God, how and why is so much suffering allowed for in the world? And I connected that question to the suffering that I see all around me, which is the problem of homelessness in Los Angeles. So the question for me became not why is there so much suffering in the world in the abstract moral sense, but also in the economic and socio-political sense all around us in Los Angeles. And I connected the wisdom literature kind of teaching on Job and Lear to contemporary problems of homelessness. This meant that I had to educate myself about homelessness in a new way. The germ for this course came when I asked myself a simple question. Why is it that I sometimes, when a homeless person approaches me and asks me for money, I don't really know what to do? I kind of stop in my tracks, and sometimes I give money and sometimes I don't. I don't really have a good reason. I haven't really thought about it. And this is where academic training and expertise comes into play. I decided that I would educate myself about homelessness in Los Angeles. I started reading about it. That led to researching national homelessness. So I'm going to ask you to pick up your clickers now and answer this simple question. What do you usually do when a homeless person asks you for money? So if you want to take a look at those 5 choices and choose one, I'll give you a couple of moments to think. You may have thoughts that don't fit up there. Pick the one that's closest to you. And okay, Joe, I'm clicking show hide results.
Is it showing up on the screen there?
Oh, it's showing up on the screen here.
You can click on the title bar and drag it over to the other screen. Either right to the right or the left. It should bring it over.
So, okay, and we'll figure this out for next time. So we've got about half of everyone says sometimes yes, sometimes no. Some would rather offer food. Some would choose not to give anything. So we're going to bracket that question, and I'm going to invite you to come back to that question and reflect on that question after the presentation. This is a difficult question. This is a question to which there's not a simple answer, even if you believe that there's a right answer. So then, how do I get, sorry. Okay, so the next question that follows from that is what is the ethical basis for your decision? When I first thought about whether or not I give homeless people money when they ask me, I didn't even consider it as an ethical question. But as I reflected on the question, I realized that there should be some basis on which I make this decision. So I'm going to invite you to read these choices, A through D, and if none of them fit you, you can put down none of the above. The first 4 choices are just guesses at what I've had people tell me in conversation, but they certainly don't cover the range of ethical answers. And we have a split on this one between I want to do what I can for people in need and fear or uncertainty prevent me from being able to help the persons even if I want to. Very common, very understandable reactions. And again, hopefully what we talk about in the next little while will bring you back to this complicated question with some new ways to think about it. Okay, final poll question for now. What do you think is the primary cause of homelessness in the USA today? And you can click anytime you've got a choice. Mental illness, lack of affordable housing, substance abuse and addiction, unemployment, lack of motivation. So in this case, we finally have a question with the right answer. And many people think it is mental illness. Many people think it is substance abuse. But the right answer is, in fact, B, which was lack of affordable housing. Far and away the main cause of homelessness in America today. That condition has a history, which in a full version of the course we would spend a couple of weeks exploring. But essentially in the 1980s until now, the federal government has withdrawn from producing affordable housing in this country, and housing development has become a privatized industry, with the result that we see situations like downtown Los Angeles where there's development going on to build beautiful condos and high-rise apartment buildings for the well-to-do that can work and live in downtown, right next to Skid Row where tens of thousands of homeless live every day and every night. So we see these inequalities perpetuated through government policy, very important. So what are the challenges of living homeless? What is the experience of living homeless? The first thing to recognize is simply continuous bad health. You're exposed to the elements. It's difficult to find a place to sleep easily and well. Many homeless, about 1 out of every 5, are mentally ill or physically disabled or both. Almost half have chronic health conditions as a result of living this way. And about 30%, according to sort of averaging most reports, have substance abuse problems, addiction. The thing that I found out about in doing my research that really changed the way I look at this problem is not the health problems. I knew about that. It doesn't take much imagination to think that this is how homeless people really experience life. But the second category is a category that sociologists have come up with, and that's called social death. So social death means that from the point of view of being a member of a society or part of a cultural fabric, that you are dead to the world. So if you're a homeless person, you are not part of family, you may be part of immediate family, but you don't have the larger affiliations, you're not part of different social groups, you're ostracized. So the experience is one of isolation, and you experience from the public a lot of stigma, a lot of disassociation, which is when if you're a homeless person and you ask someone for money, or you ask them for food, or you say hello to them, you get that turning away. And as someone who's had that experience, it's hard not to want to do that. It's hard not to want to see that person and not to engage them. There's a lot of a mentality of blaming the victim of some of the conditions that produce this. So with the description right here, especially of the health problems and social death, in the first weeks, of course, of the course, we looked at this kind of background, and then we looked at the book of Job. And the book of Job from the Old Testament is one of the books of the wisdom literature, as it's called. And I'm sure most of you know the story, but essentially Job is a prosperous, well-to-do man who has lots of cattle and sheep and gold and children and a wonderful home, and he's faithful and obeys the law of God. And for some reason, God allows Satan to make a wager with him, and Satan says, I'll bet you $50 or whatever that I can get Job to renounce his faith. So God lets Satan first take everything material from Job, and then he lets him torture him physically. The only thing he can't do is kill him. And so it's a test of Job's faith. And Job spends the whole book agonizing over why this has been done to him. So it's the question that I started from with the wisdom literature, which is, if there is any form of God, why is there so much suffering? And in what is called the summation, Job sums up the experience that he's had. And in this summary, which is treated in all kinds of Old Testament commentaries, theological books, we see an expression of human suffering. And again, the big experience of the class for me was rereading these same lines in the context of the homeless conditions that we were talking about. This is giving a face to the suffering of a homeless person. So Job has been talking about how he used to have everything and be a respected member of the society. And he says, and now I am jeered at by schoolboys, whose fathers I would have considered unfit to take care of my dogs. Who were they but mongrels? No one would have called them men. And now I am in agony. The days of sorrow have caught me. Pain pierces my skin. Suffering gnaws my bones. Despair grips me by the neck, shakes me by the collar of my coat. I despair and can find no comfort. I stand up and cry for help. It's a beautiful but piercing passage. The first two stanzas really point to the fall that Job has experienced, the loss. He used to look down on fellow humans. He's jeered at by schoolboys whose fathers he wouldn't have thought fit to take care of his dogs, who he thought of as mongrels. And now he's in that position. He's been dehumanized. He's lost his humanity. So now all he is pain and suffering. That image of suffering gnaws my bones. He's like a carcass that suffering is like a vulture preying on. Despair grips him by the neck and shakes him by the collar of his coat. That's a visceral expression of the hopelessness of a homeless person, the condition that they find themselves in, and there's absolutely no comfort. And he stands up and cries for help, and he feels that there's nothing answering. It falls on deaf ears. The book of Job has an interesting ending where God finally does give an answer to Job, and that's for another day. Let's take a break from literature for a moment with a couple of poll questions, and we'll go back to literature. Job loses his whole family. This question is a factual question. You can take out your clickers and enter your answer now. What percentage do you think, what percentage of homeless people are families with children? And everybody, what's that?
Could we have more time?
Oh, I gave one. Don't worry, faculty. The kids will be faster than Paul Jimenez. Not to worry. Okay. So, I think, let's see what it, did we get? Now we got 2 votes. Okay. That's okay? Okay. Let's not waste any more time on this. So.
Let's go back. Let's try one more time.
Take 3. Ready? Start.
Okay, go.
Everybody got it? All right, now let's see what happens. Hey, we got 2.
There's 2 slow.
It's my bad. No. It's me clicking on and off. So we had, many of you thought that 25% of people that are homeless live in families, and some of you thought 80%, which would be really shocking. The answer is 40%, but it's the fastest growing part of the homeless population. Most people, when they picture a homeless person, think of an individual male, usually older. But the very sad fact is that more and more families live homeless in this country. And okay, now there we go. Next poll question. Most of us think of the homeless as people who never look for work, who haven't been working, who are somehow in a kind of timeless state of homelessness because we just see them for a moment. That's not really the case. Many homeless try to find work and or have been working. So this question is, what percentage of homeless people, and you can start clicking now, what percentage of homeless people in the USA report having worked in the past week? And this was done in 2006, just for accuracy. So most people guessed 20%, with some at 10 and 35%, and the answer this time is the high one. It's almost half of homeless people reported on nationally in a national poll reported having worked within the past week as of that year. So that's another, I hope for many of you, startling statistic that dispels some of the myths about the experience and wishes and desires and aspirations of the homeless. So Both when we looked at the figure of Job, we saw someone who had everything and lost everything. The other figure that fits is King Lear. So, how many of you have read King Lear? Hopefully you've read this in high school. Maybe you've been to a production. King Lear is one of Shakespeare's greatest and most devastating tragedies. And what happens in King Lear is at the beginning, he assembles his family, which is his 3 daughters, and he asks them to declare how much they love him, and he will reward them by dividing up his kingdom and giving them the spoils. And the first 2 daughters, who are the evil ones, profess great love for him, and the third one, his favorite, Cordelia, says that she will say nothing because she loves him just as she is supposed to, no more and no less, and Lear banishes her. And one of the most loyal servants in the court, Kent, protests vehemently that Lear is doing something terrible, and he banishes Kent. And the upshot is that King Lear ends up saying, I will spend my time between the 2 daughters' houses, and Cordelia is banished. So what happens right at the beginning of the play is Lear carves up his homeland, the land of England, and he carves up his home. He banishes his daughter. He renders her homeless. And as the play goes on, there's a parallel plot, and the other virtuous character, Edgar, who's going to become king at the end, Edgar has to disguise himself as a homeless person. So when we read the play in the context of the course on homelessness, it suddenly reads completely differently. This is a play about people becoming homeless. And the most famous instance is King Lear himself. So by the middle of the play, King Lear is out. He's been kicked out by both evil daughters, and he's out on a moor, a big old swampy field. There's a storm raging, and he makes this speech. And this speech is one of the most famous speeches in the history of literature. It's been done by every great actor. And this is Lear's moment of recognition and solidarity with the suffering of the homeless. So Lear says, poor naked wretches, wheresoever you are that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, how shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, your looped and windowed raggedness, defend you from seasons such as these? Oh, I have taken too little care of this. Take physic, pomp. Expose thyself to what wretches feel, that thou mayst shake the superflux to them, and show the heavens more just. So if we just break this down a little bit and translate it into the context of homelessness that we're looking at, poor naked wretches, wherever you are that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm, Lear has peeled off his clothes. He's naked, going mad, exposed to a storm in the middle of nothing, and he realizes all of a sudden that he's one of many humans in this state. He's literally naked in the storm. So he's addressing the people that he suddenly realizes are his fellow human beings, the people that a king would never have thought about. How shall your houseless heads and unfed sides, beautiful phrases for people with no roof over their head to protect them, unfed sides, people that are skinny and emaciated from lack of food, your looped and windowed raggedness, that's an image of clothes full of holes. How is all of this, how are you going to be defended from seasons such as these? Seasons is a word for the weather, the storm that's going on, but it's also the times, the conditions from seasons such as these. How are we going to sustain you through living through times in your life like this? And he realizes as a king that he's never thought about this. I've taken too little care of this. And then this interesting line that Shakespeare critics have wrestled over, take physic, pomp. So physic is a homeopathic kind of medicine, right? It's something that attacks the symptom. The symptom is pomp. He's been pompous. He's been on his high horse. So he wants to take medicine that's going to basically a kind of poison that's going to kill the pomp in him. He wants to expose himself to what wretches feel so that he can shake the superflux to them and show the heavens more just, so that he can show the rage of the waste and superfluousness of existence and show the heavens more just, so that on behalf of the homeless he can be an advocate that shows there is some order and justice in the world. So this wonderful speech that has been read as an existential universal statement, when read in this context, King Lear becomes like an advocate for the homeless. So the last few minutes, I just want to turn to the end of our course, which was to come back to the contemporary problem of homelessness, specifically in Los Angeles. So here's a poll question that you can answer at any time now. Which city in the United States has the most homeless in it? This question has a right answer, and thankfully, many of you got the right answer, which is Los Angeles. The startling thing about this is not that Los Angeles has more homeless people than New York, which for me, I would have guessed New York before I studied this problem. I picture New York as full of packed streets of homeless people. The startling thing is Los Angeles has more homeless than the other cities combined, than all the other cities combined. That should be a mind-blowing statistic. So when I was preparing this course and doing this research, what I discovered was I was not an educated person about the very city I live in. And as the course went on, I had this experience over and over again that I was learning with my students. I was being educated by their knowledge and experience and research about the very context that I inhabit every day. So in the course, I was very fortunate to have two students. I have to change the color of the purple. I had two students who participated in the first ever count of homeless people around Westchester, the part of the city that we live in. So I'm used to having the laser pointer. But I will point out where the LMU campus is, which is, where did it go?
Jefferson and Lincoln.
Yeah. So the LMU campus is not filled with marks of the homeless, but these purple, these are signs of vehicles with people living in them. And these red pins are signs of, it's usually cardboard or sleeping bags on sidewalks or in alleys. So this is a map that shows where on this night they walked around Westchester and counted and marked where they found the homeless. So when I saw this, I realized I tend to think of homelessness in Los Angeles as being way over there downtown and up north a little bit in Venice and Santa Monica. It's all over the city. And where do the homeless in Westchester sleep? Mostly people in cars and vans, but the startling thing was to find out that there are also a lot of homeless encampments in the Bologna wetlands. The Bologna wetlands is this nice area of vegetation you can see from the bluff here, and it looks like just an open expanse of nature. And my colleagues in the natural sciences take students out and do lab work in the wetlands. I never realized that there were homeless people living there. So again, the course was an education in my very surroundings, and I felt like I knew the city and the immediate context of the campus even better. There is one little footnote to add to this, which is all of this does not mean that homeless people will encounter you on campus. You will not have that happen on the LMU campus. So to come to a conclusion, how can you, let's say that you come to LMU and part of your academic experience is, or part of your LMU experience is that you want to take up the problem of homelessness. From an academic standpoint, we have, you could go to the Center for the Study of Los Angeles, which is housed next to the Political Science Department. It's an interdisciplinary center that brings a lot of political figures, does a lot of studies of Los Angeles in different ways. That would be a great place to get educated about homelessness in Los Angeles. You could do coursework that would engage homelessness from a variety of perspectives. This is a problem that is what we would call interdisciplinary. So political science takes up homelessness in some ways, sociology in other ways. History has its own approaches. Psychology would talk about addiction and problems of treating mental illness in the homeless. In English, we speak of it from the point of view of literature. So it's easy to overlook the fact that when you identify a social or political or religious or moral issue that you're interested in, that you can study that in a number of disciplines. There's not one field that owns problems like this. In terms of campus life, every year there's a Homeless Awareness Week. You'll see a group of students sleeping outside for the week to raise awareness. There's a food drive for the homeless. Many service organizations offer opportunities to go and feed the homeless and do service for the homeless. Service is a great part of the LMU mission and student life. Service should always be connected back to reflecting on what are the takeaways from your service experience. It's not enough to fulfill the hours. You've got to connect that back to your deeper sides. So today what I hope you'll take away from this is, one, to reflect on what you've learned about the homeless today that you didn't know before, and with that knowledge in mind, you might revisit the ethical question of how you respond to the homeless when they approach you. For my own part, when I finished taking the course, I had a different answer to that question, and the different answer is really simple. I'm not going to solve the problem of homelessness by giving food or money or not. And I'm not going to make any assumptions about that person and how they got there. But what I can do is prevent social death. So remember I talked about how one aspect of the homeless condition is the experience of being cut off from humanity. If you look at a person who approaches you, if you engage in whatever way with a homeless person, you make them part of the social fabric, and that you can do. Whatever else you do or don't do, you can do that. The second thing I'd really urge you to think about is, what do you want your LMU academic experience to be? So you should be thinking not about what am I supposed to be as a major and what kind of jobs do I get with that major. That's an impractical question now anyway. But you should be thinking, what is your passion? What are you really interested in? What do you want to do to change the world or contribute to the world? And how is your academic experience going to not only help you do that, but challenge you to do it in the best way you can? Thank you, and I feel sorry for you having to go to your faculty advisors now. Okay.
Thank you.